dear friends. I welcome you on behalf of Subhra, Ranjan IAS, and today we are going to discuss about test number 4 of paper number 1, that is the history section. The question you can see is on your screen, is related to discuss the evolution of Indian nationalism from moderate phase to the advent of Gandhian mass struggle. You see, when it comes to questions like this, it is asking about two phases and it is asking about the evolution. So we must understand that what time period are we talking about. So we are talking about the time period from the starting point is from 1820s, that is the social reform movement, to Gandhian phase. What does that mean? That means this time period is roughly around 1920s to independence. So let's get started. The first thing is what should be the introduction. So the question says discuss the evolution of Indian nationalism from moderate phase to the advent of the Gandhian march. So you can especially say that the the nationalism the Indian nationalism has moved from classes to masses. What do I mean by this? I mean that earlier the Indian National Congress was a microscopic minority, as a lot of historians say. The Indian nationalism was starting from the elite, who are the Western educated, English educated, zamindars, the people who are from Bhadraloks, the people Chitpavan Brahmins, upper class and upper caste. And gradually, when Gandhi come to India and start his journey from Champaran 1900 1718, the movement moved towards masses. And what does masses mean? The peasants, the tribals, the women, the trading class, the rich and the poor class, villagers, the suburbs, the areas where nationalism could not reach. So it's a long journey, so you have to just summarize it. If we talk about in bookish language, in as far as with this question, then you see this as Indian nationalism evolved through multiple phases. As I said, in moderate phase it was characterized by had elite leadership, and when Gandhi came, it had a widespread political participation. As I said, the political participation where we have more people is the Gandhian phase. Before Gandhi came to India, Indian National Congress was kind of microscopic minority, as people say. Anyway, so this is, you can write this as an introduction part. As far as the first phase is concerned, let me get back to the moderate phase. You see, as far as moderate phase is concerned, it is National Congress founded by in 1885. 1885 was a very instrumental time where we see there is a rise of Indian National Congress. There is a foundation of Indian National Congress. Indian National Congress was the amalgamation, was a mix of all the small regional national movement, starting from Madras Mahajan Sabha, Indian Reform Association, Bengal British Indian Association, in East India Association of Dadabhai Naroji, and many other, you know, uh, 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 it was a mix of all those things. Anyway, so leaders like Dadabhai Naroji, Gopal Krishna Gokhale, who's the political father of Gandhi, and Firoz Shah Mehta. Again, these three people were the greatest moderates. The methods of moderates were prayers, petitions, and you see other things. So these people were had petitions, prayers, meetings, and they just wanted some participation in the governance. I am again talking about the first phase. So you can talk about this in the first part of the answer. Okay. Okay. Then the main demands was, again, they wanted some sort of participation in the in the administration. They just wanted to have a fair share in the civil services, in the legislative councils. Very few of them raise the concern of the common masses, and I want to say about the common masses is the peasants, is the labor classes, is the poor people. But when we come to the second one, things become very different from this. And then we'll come to the Gandhian phase. So we had talked about the introduction from classes to masses. Then the first phase is Of course, the moderate phase, the moderates had faith in British liberalism. The these people thought that Britishers are in power. These people were Western educated people, and these people thought that when Britishers come to the power, or Britishers have come to the power to reform Indian society, so they wanted to, uh, uh, they do not want to make them unhappy. They just wanted to stay within themselves, within their ambit, but they wanted certain type of participation. So this phase succeeded in awakening political consciousness. How did the political consciousness arose? By newspapers. Newspapers like Swadesh Mitram, The Hindu, Patriot, Tribune in Punjab, The Hindu in South India. We had Amrit Bazar Patrika, Tribune, as I said, Hindu, Kesari by Bal Gangadhar Tilak, and many more newspapers. So these people, newspapers played a very important role in arousing the masses. Okay, so this is the first phase of it. As far as the other phase is concerned, let me just tell you other things about it. Yes. Then we come to the moderate extremist phase. So the extremist phase is from roughly from this time onwards, where we see the activities of Bengali and Punjabi nationalists become very important. And this is the time period of Anushilan Samiti, Dhaka Anushilan, and Calcutta Anushilan Samiti. The leaders were Lal Bal Pal, Bipin Chandra Pal, and Lala Lajpat Rai. Uh, Tilak Saab was in Maharashtra, Bipin Chandra Pal and Lala Lajpat Rai was in, of course, in Punjab. Bipin Chandra Pal was in Bengal. So they wanted to boycott British goods. And mind you, Swadeshi movement was the biggest movement we saw. Very much supported by the moderates, or the moderates of the Swadeshis of the revolutionary activities. And again, the Anushilan Samiti was playing a very important role. Okay, so it had students, peasants, artists, and making nationalism more inclusive and more militant. We'll talk about militant nationalism again. The third phase is what we call the Gandhian movement from 1919 to 1947. Let's talk about it one by one. The Gandhian phase becomes very important. And what does that mean? Okay. So the entry of Gandhi creates a new era of nationalism in India, where he starts his journey from Champaran Satyagraha, and which spreads across other areas. And when it comes to Champaran Satyagraha is the first Satyagraha where we see peasants played a very important role from this time onwards. Before this, peasants had never ever participated in an organized non-violent matter. Peasants had protested, but they protested in an organized way. So you must keep this in mind. And this gradually led to amalgamation of other streams, where we see the women, the peasants, the tribals, the working class movement, that is the factory workers, played a very important role. And everything mixed together led to the non-cooperation movement, or the Congress Khilafat movement. I've told you in my class. Again, in 1930s, we see another phase of it as civil disobedience movement, and ultimately the Quit India movement, that is the Bharat Chodo movement, where in these 15 to 17 years, starting from 1917 to 1942. There was this organization of Congress where the women, the working class, the peasants, the upper layer, the revolutionaries, where everybody was getting together within the umbrella organization of Congress under the leadership of Gandhi. And this is the third phase of Indian nationalism. Remember, the first phase was the moderate phase, where the Indian National Congress or the nationalism was in formative days. The second phase is of the revolutionaries, where along with the moderates and the revolutionaries, though they were having some issues with each other, they were getting together in the same direction, that is the rise of nationalism. The third phase is more organized and has three phases, from the Champaran, then the non-cooperation, and then the civil disobedience movement, ultimately leading to the ouster, the out. We are sending Britishers out of this nation, thanks to our everybody, not just Gandhi, but the revolutionaries, the Anushilan Samitis, the Bengalis, the Marathis, the Punjabis, the Odias, and everybody. In this, you can write your regional heroes also like Madhusudan Das and others. Now, millions of people came together. Moral force was emphasized, self-reliance was emphasized. Again, we talk about khadi, self-sufficiency, and less importance being given to the foreign-made cloth. The conclusion is very important. I would like you to just copy this. The evolution of Indian nationalism from moderate reforms to Gandhian mass movement reflect the dynamic political awakening, where we used the British education, we used English, we used telegraph, we used railways, we used the newspapers, everything we used, and the Britishers thought that we are people who are a nation of a snake charmers, but ultimately we gave them a tough fight and threw them out of the nation. So this is very important, and this has to be understood and written also. So this is one part of it. Okay. Again, I would like to move to the other question. Okay. So the other question is question number second. So the question number second is this: discuss the causes and consequences of the Battle of Plassey and significance in establishing British rule in India. You see, there are two questions in this. The Battle of Plassey, which was fought in 1757 between the Nawab of Bengal, Siraj Uddola, versus Robert Clive of East India Company. So it was fought in 1757 in Plassey, near the village of Bengal, which is south, 50 kilometers south from Bardhaman. Okay, Kolkata, sorry. Defining moment of the Indian history. Well, if I would like to break this into introduction, then you can talk about discuss. The question is discuss the causes and consequences of the Battle of Plassey and its significance. Well, Plassey was a very symbolic battle, in which a small army of 3,000 British men defeated a 30,000 army of Nawab of Bengal, because the Britishers were more superiorly trained, well disciplined, and regularly paid. We'll talk about that. Then we can talk about the economic interest causes. You see, East India Company sought to dominate the trade in Bengal. Trade of Bengal in those days was silk, tea, cotton, jute, muslin, and many other important things. So, Nawab of Bengal, Sirajuddaulah, viewed the company's increasing influence as a threat. These people were misusing their privileges, because these privileges were given to them the by the Nawab of Bengal, and earlier it was given by them to them by whom? The the king of a Mughals king. Again, and nobody would like their area to be fortificated. The Britishers fortified Calcutta because they wanted to enclose themselves from Marathas. They wanted to save themselves from East India Company, so from the Nawab of Bengal. But they were doing this in an alien nation. Alien nation means India, which was not liked and ultimately led to the battle. Again, the Sirajuddaulah was leveraged by the British key nobles. Mir Zafar was the person who played a very important role. Mir Zafar was a relative of Sirajuddaulah, but he was very ambitious and he sided with the Britishers against the Nawab, and ultimately led to his defeat. I told you there were military problems also, where the army of Britishers under Robert Clive were more organized, more powerful, more ambitious, and the East India Company was very much playing a very important role in South India also. They had knew how to organize themselves, how to be disciplined, unlike the Indian army. The military weakness and the mismanagement, Sirajuddaullah's army was large but poorly ill-equipped. And the consequences of the battle, it ultimately led to establishment of British rule in India, British economic dominance in Bengal specifically, and in long terms, it gave the Britishers the courage to establish itself as the pan-India power. Now, as I told you, it ultimately led to the foundation of the British rule in India, economic exploitation and decline. British control reshaped Bengal economy for imperial benefits. What are those? These items were very important for the Indian exports and ultimately led to Britishers establishing themselves in India and looting, literally looting Indian resources. Now, the second part is very important, the significance. And I would like to take some moment and talk about this. The importance, the significance of Battle of Plassey was not that big war. Mir Jafar, when he defected, when he sided with Robert Clive, the only thing he did, what he did not do anything. Yes, you are hearing it right. He did not do anything because he he wanted to support his. He was supposed to support the army of Sirajuddaulah, his emperor, but he did not do that. He just stayed at his place, and this Britishers started coming up. And this was morning 8 a.m. 1757. In 1757, the Britishers heavily used guns, what do you call it, tanks, top we call it, and it was a surprise attack, which was the famous specialty of Clive was a very shrewd, very adamant ruler who just wanted to strike an offensive, and this counter attack and the issues with internal problems with the Sirajuddaulah and with the Mir Zafar support of mm, Jagat Seth, who was siding with the Britishers, not with the king, ultimately led to the British supremacy. And battle was a watershed event that enabled the British East India Company's rule in a transition from it being a trader to a ruler, which later happened in 1764, Battle of Buxar and Battle of then the Treaty of Allahabad. Now we have next question. We have question number 3. Now, discuss the contributions of major dynasties such as Mughals, Guptas, Cholas. Mauryas, sorry, Guptas, Cholas, and Mughals to the Indian architecture. So we have to trace the evolution of art and architecture from rock cut court art, 3rd century BC to 17th century BC. So you can say we start from the rock cut architecture of Mauryas and we end with the Persian art and architecture. So the evolution of Indian art and architecture, the starting point of Indian architecture is a slow process where it starts from 3rd century BC, which is the rise of the Buddhist architecture, the rock cut architecture. The famous example is Sanchi. And it ends by regional art and architecture, and not to forget the Mughal art and architecture. So which has a artistic heritage. Okay, so you can talk about this you can easily talk about. Anyway, I'll move to the other part of this question. Now, as far as the Mauryan dynasty is concerned, as I have told you, that it marked the beginning of the large scale state sponsored art and architecture. The first was again the Sanchi Stupa. We had rock cut art like Dhauli, it's there in Bhubaneswar. We have Sanchi, we have Bihar, sandstone edicts in Delhi. Ashokan pillars was an executive capital, line capital, which is the symbol of Indian bureaucracy, and it illustrated the synthesis between indigenous and Persian influence. Because in 326 BC we had the Silk Route being trading, and there were trading relations between the Alexander's Europe and India under Chandragupta and Ashoka the Great, then Dasratha, their grandchildren. So there is this starting point from rock cut architecture, then Sanchi Stupa, then Dholi, where Ashoka takes the path of non-violence and accepts Buddhism, very very symbolic. So you can talk about all these things one by one. Then we can easily talk about the Gupta dynasty. Again, it is called as the peak of the Indian art and architecture, is called as the golden age of Indian architecture, where we see examples like the Savatar temple in Devgarh, Uttar Pradesh, is the first structural temple of Nagara style. A Vishnu temple. Again, then we talk about Ajanta cave paintings, where we see that it was a fresco painting. Then we can talk about the period also reflected the rise of literature, Hindu literature, coming up of Bhagavatism and other things. Then we can talk about the zenith of art and architecture in South India before Vijayanagara Empire was born. Before Vijayanagara Empire was born, Cholas played a very, very important role. The Cholas temples, I would have shown you those temples, the Brihadeshwara temple, the Rajarajeshwara temple, and the Meenakshi temple. These temples played a very, very important role, which had elaborate buildings, which had water tanks, which was absent in North India. So the temples were the rich sources, the Chola bronze sculptures, the Nataraja statues, the Brihadeshwara temple of Tanjore, the massive elaborate paintings, fresco paintings, and the Shiva temples of these things. So you can talk about these things. Then you can talk about the other parts. Now we can talk about the third phase of it, which is the Mughal painting. So we have already discussed the modern art, the court art, the popular art, like the stupas, the Sanchi stupa, the Ashokan pillars, Sarnath pillar. Then we talk about the Guptas, the Ajanta Ellora, the Ajanta, and the Dasavatara temple. Then we are talking about Cholas and then Mughals. So we have, sorry, the blend of Indo-Islamic architecture, a blend of Persian and Central Asian elements. Humayun tomb, Fatehpur Sikri, Taj Mahal. So you know everything about it. So it is red sandstone, white marble, very very popular art and architecture we have. And in the end, we can say that the Mauryas laid the foundation of the Buddhist art. Okay, like the foundation of the Buddhist and pillar art, and Guptas refined it further. It was later refined by Cholas, and it led to its peak in the 15th, 16th, 17th century with a blend of not only Mughal architecture but Rajasthani architecture, with Gujarati architecture, Chandelas, Chauhans. These temples were very much important. So you can add the Modhera temple. You can talk about the art of Chandelas. So you can talk about these: the Sun Temple of Modhera, the Chaussat Yogini, okay, which was asked by UPSC prelims. So you can talk about everything because this is a open-ended question. Okay, so I'm just not verbatim talking about these things because you'll get these things anyway. But I'm just telling you how to write an answer. Writing an answer is very very important. Okay. Anyway, uh, so then we can talk about other questions. Okay, question number 4. Now, describe the evolution of temple architecture in Odisha, uh, from the rock cut caves of Udaygiri, Khandgiri, and grand temples of Lingaraja. So, in this, you can talk about the evolution. The evolution of temple architecture in Odisha showcases a remarkable progression. How? From Ashokan Dholi to others. Let's talk about it one by one. Now, you see, Bhubaneswar and the Odisha area has been the cradle of rock cut architecture, or the basis of the rock cut architecture in India. Let's talk about it one by one because I don't want to miss on these things because these are very important. So we start from the rock-cut architecture of Udaygiri and Khandgiri from the 6th century onwards during the time period of Kharvela in Bhubaneswar represents the earliest rock-cut architectures. These rocks are for Buddhist monks, Jain monks. Okay, these are the dwellings for the meditators. That means these are the rich centers of Pala architecture. Later, architecture, simple feature, low ceilings, chambered, and these are the areas you can see. The caves have intricate reliefs, inscriptions depicted religious themes of royal possessions. That means Kharavela Empire played a very important role and also, gave patronage to Buddhist, Jain, and Ajivika sect. Now, then we can talk about the transition in the medieval period. So, from the rock cut architecture of 2nd century BC, we see a transition to the temple architecture. At its zenith is the Lingaraja temple, the Jagannatha temple. How? So we see evolution towards more permanent structural form of in earlier medieval times, integrating religious symbolism and increasing decorative. You see, I'll show you. Temples became in a Kalinga style characterizing Rekha, Devla, Sanctum Tower, Devla Pitha Assembly Hall, Devla vacuum center, and early temple are the Parameshwara temple, similar to the foundational elements of Odisha temple architecture. I'll show you with the image. Now, I just want to enlarge this for you. Everybody of you, I hope, know about this temple. Very important: the Shikhara, the Rekha Devula, and the other areas. So let's talk about the grand Lingaraja temple. So Lingaraja temple, 11th century Bhubaneswar, represents the mature classical phase of Kalinga architecture, a subsect of Nagara style. When I say the subset of Nagara style, I say the sub part of Nagara style. Okay, so it construction of a Rekha Devla style with towering curvilinear spine. This is called a Rekha Devla. And then we have Vimana. This is Vimana. And then we have rising 55 meters, 55 meters. The temple complex is spatial, structural, and main components are Vimana. This is Vimana. This is Jagmohana. Jagmohana is this, where people are assembling. And then we have dancing hall somewhere around here. So this is a very elaborate temple. Then we can talk about the Sun Temple of Konark, which is again the zenith of the temple architecture of the Nagara style of architecture. Again, built during 13th century by Narsimhadeva. Please understand the time period, 13th century. We had started from Dhauli and Udaygiri, and we are somewhere around here. Konark Temple is the pinnacle of Odisha. This is the famous wheel. So there are wheels on the all the sides. So the design resembles the chariots of sun god, featuring 12 pair of wheels, okay, and symbolizing seven horses. Temple combines Nagara style of North India with the Kalinga style. So this is a mixture of temple styles of Nagara style and the regional style, which is the Kalinga style. Okay. So then we can talk about the last thing, that is the concluding part. So concluding part is the evolution of temple architecture in Odisha mirrors the trajectory from the starting point is Udaygiri and Khandgiri, and then ends up in the Lingaraj of Konark. It shows a gradual evolution from rock cut architecture to structural architecture. Okay, so this you can write where we have an evolution of the architecture. Okay, so then we can move forward. Okay, then we can talk about question number fifth. So question number fifth becomes very important. Now it is asking about the critically analyzed Bhakti movement in medieval Odisha as a tool to cultural synthesis, social awakening, and resistance of the orthodoxy. So we can start this question from something like you see, we can start this question from uh, the Bhakti movement played a pivotal role. What is Bhakti movement? That means where you are transcending from the basic transcending from the basic what do you call it, when you are questioning the authority of the Vedas, but at the same time accepting the god which is Vishnu. So it's a synthesis, social reform, awakening, and resistance to orthodoxy to what? Vedic orthodoxy. Okay, so movement in Odisha is a synthesis of tribal beliefs and ancient worship for Lord Jagannatha, a broader pan Indian Vaishnavism. That means it's a mix of tribal culture and all India religious culture. Very important, guys. The saints like Jagadeva plays a very important role, author of devotional Geet Govinda. Geet Govinda, you should know. And Panchasaka poet creatively blending Sanskritic Hinduism and the vernacular tradition, enriching Odia literature and also mixing it with the Vaishnavism. So it is an integration, which is the beauty of Indian culture. So the movement integrated religious literature and devotional music. It also integrated, you see, and the later people, the influence of Sri Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. Mind you, the Chaitanya Mahaprabhu went to Varanasi, went to Mathura for education, and he learned certain tricks, certain tenets of Sanskritic literature, and then he spread the Bhakti movement in the East. And 15th, 16th century onwards, intensification of Krishna devotion, deepening of emotional communal dimensions of Bhakti in Odisha was taking place. And not to forget the Sankirtan and the singing, which was a very important part of the Odia culture, which ultimately led to questioning of the authority of resistance of orthodoxy. It is very important that Bhakti movement resisted the Brahminical orthodoxy and complex caste hierarchy. And these people were sort of social reformers in India. The movement fostered religious tolerance, a mixture and competing religious influences of Islam in India. Okay, so Bhakti movement is a democratizing movement of the of India. Now let's talk about question number six, a very important question. Okay, festivals of Odisha represent the symbiotic relationship between religion, nature, and community critically examined. Please understand this question very carefully. Now, let's talk about it one by one. Now, what festivals do we have? Let's talk about them one by one, then we'll talk about it. So, festival is vividly illustrating the symbiotic, a mixed relationship between religion, nature, communities, reflecting the deep root of cultural ethos. We can talk about the Durga Puja. So, festivals like Rath Yatra, Durga Puja, Kartikeya Purnima are primary regional celebrations dedicated to whom? So these are dedicated to Lord Jagannatha, Goddess Durga, and divine other divine manifestations. These festivals embody, incorporate myths, legends, and cyclic cosmology central to Odisha's spiritual world view, connecting devotees with the divine. That is very important. Connecting the devotees with the divine is very important part of our Odia history. Then the connection with the nature. It has a great connection with the nature. And how do we say that? Many festivals in Odisha align with natural cycles, agricultural seasons, as we see, and ecological phenomenon highlight the intrinsic respect for the nature. We all know that eastern and western Odisha is very much prone to disasters, cyclones, rains, and all. For example, Bali Yatra commemorates ancient maritime trade linked to, for example, like Bali Yatra commemorates ancient link to lunar calendar, while Makar Sankranti celebrates the sun's transition, marking harvest time. So you must know these things. So utilization of natural elements like flowers, water, sacred grooves, river water rituals underscore the harmonious relationship between the environment. Okay, then we can talk about these things, very important. The critical perspective. While the festivals promote unity, environmental respect, and occasional commercialization and politicization risk undermining their pure religious ecological ethos. You might have seen in the recent past lot of issues seen in Cuttack region. So I don't want to get into the politics of it, but yes, the challenge remains in balancing traditional values with modern influence to preserve the festivals. And not, and this conclusion becomes very important where we see the festival of Odisha exemplify a dynamic, enduring interplay between religious, nature and community. They not only sustain the religious rich spiritual heritage but also nurture environmental consciousness. Without consciousness of the tribal culture, without understanding the terrain, you can be from Balasore to Sambalpur to Kandhamal to other regions. We must understand that we also should respect the nature. Now we have next question, that is question number 7th. So the question says the major social religious reform movement of 19th century India and their role in emergence of modern Indian society. Please understand the question very carefully. As far as the question is concerned, there are two parts to it. Reform movements of 19th century India and their role in emergence of modern Indian history. What are the reforms we are talking about? Socio-religious reform movement are the starting point of Indian reform movement or Renaissance. From the rise of Buddhism and Jainism, which are reforming Indian society, we come across the Bhaktism and Sufism, which are also reforming the. And then in 19th century, we come across another reform movement, which are reforming the condition of women, talking about female infanticide, talking against sati, and are promoting women education. So you can talk about these things. Now, the the major leaders of the reform movement, we must know. So movements in the 19th century are Brahma Samaj, again advocating monotheism, abolition of sati, promotion of widow remarriage, and emphasis on education and rational religious reforms. You see, starting from the Raja Ram Mohan Roy, who is questioning the authority of Vedas, who is questioning that whatever is written in scriptures cannot be true and there needs to be a critical analysis. And that's how the reform movement started. Yes, you can talk about that. Then we can talk about Arya Samaj, which talks about the evils, like he opposes idolatry, caste discrimination, but he says go back to Vedas, not Vedic times. He says Vedic learning is good, but Vedic times we should not go to Vedic times. So he said that there should be a reform in the Indian society, especially we should work against the caste system, the problems associated with the caste, which is a very big issue as far as the Indian society is concerned. Then we can talk about other reform movements, which are the Pratana Samaj, the offshoot of Brahma Samaj by Keshav Chandra Sen. And then we talk about in Muslims, we have Aligarh movement, and then the Ramakrishna mission. All of these movements played a very, very important role in gradually evolving, progressing the society. On the one hand, there are regional movements. The starting point was, of course, in 1820s. It started off with the Raja Ram Mohan Roy, then the Keshav Chandra Sen, and the other people. It gradually moved to Maharashtra, you all know, and it took a different shape with Jyotiba Phule, which Keshav Chandra Sen moving towards these areas. Then we have Deccan Education Society, Radha Dev. Then we had people like the people from Ferguson College, D.K. Karve, who were very much instrumental to the women education, to women, against sati, against caste system. And the point is the highest point is the rise of Gandhi and the rise of Jyotiba Phule and Ambedkar. So one thing which starts in 1820s, so you can start with 1820s, and that ends in 1930s with The movement in South India, the movement in Ambedkar's movement of Dalit movement. So you can talk about the Brahma Samaj, Arya Samaj, Pratna Samaj. These are Bengalis. Then we have Satyashodak Samaj, of course, of Jyotiba Phule and Savitribai Phule. Then we can talk about Deccan Education Society by D.K. Karve, and then the Aligarh movement. All, I think most of them are talking about rationality, reform, not only in the society but also in the religion. That's why we call it the social as well as religious reforms. When it comes to the social reform, the reform has to be done in the condition of women. So they are talking about abolition of parda, women education, abolition of sati, women education, increasing the age of women. On the other hand, the religious reforms, so the social reforms are the abolition of untouchability, women education, equality, political rights. And this thing in 19th 20th century are leading to other things. Not to forget Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar, B.R. Ambedkar, Jyotiba Phule, other people who are fighting with the caste discrimination. You can also talk about Periyar, who is working in South India, who is very much against the Brahmanical system. So Periyar, you can talk about a self-respect movement also. So these are the things you can talk about. You can fill in as far as these things are concerned. Now let's talk about the role these things are playing in the modern India. This is very important. So in modern India, these things are leading to social reforms. These movements target the social issues like child marriage, caste rigidities, illiteracy, discrimination, are promoting empowerment. So this is a subheading. They educated women in education, abolition of sati, increasing the rights of women, increasing the status of women as far as women rights are concerned. And then we can talk about promoting rationalism and scientific temperament. You see, these people are opposing the superstition. How you can just burn a woman just because her husband her husband has died. Her husband is died. She's just 19 years old, and you just are discriminating against her. Her whole life becomes a life of misery. Okay, then you can talk about national consciousness. It is because of social reform movements, the glorification to Indian cultural heritage happens, which ultimately question the authority of the Britishers in India. That is very important, and that should be kept in mind. Then we can talk about the conclusion. Now, as far as conclusion is concerned, there are broader ways in which you can write the conclusion of this question. So you can talk about these movements like 19th century social reform movements catalyzed India's transition from traditional hierarchical society to a modern pluralistic and democratic one. You see, the 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 tenets of modern democratic rights like untouchability, abolition of untouchability, right to equality, right for women to come up with right to education, the 86th constitutional amendment, the 42nd constitutional amendment, and other constitutional amendments are seen its genesis, its roots in this. You can use these things in the society answer also, where you can talk about the gradual evolution of women rights, where in 19th century men, it's the men who are talking about the rights of women. Please look at it that way. You can talk about how men are talking about, like Raja Raman Roy, Keshav Chandra Sen, Ishwar Chandra Vidyasagar are talking about women rights. Gradually in 20th century we have women like Sarojini Naidu, Vijay Lakshmi Pandit, we have Arundale, George Arundale's wife, we have Annie Besant, and many women, Sarla Devi Chattopadhyay, Sarita Devi, Sarla Devi, and these people in 20th century are becoming very vocal. And post-independent, we see other women, okay, feminist women. So you can talk about these things and how these are addressing the issues of social equality, promoting education of Dalits, women, their rights, right to equality, and other things, and are also reshaping it in a contemporary times. So very important. Just to take Subhashji's question also, those of you who have done this question. Now this question is, I'm just taking questions which are not or, but this question is very important. Analyze the role of Subhash Chandra Bose in Indian National Army. Let's talk about this. So Bose becomes a very important military nationalist in India. You can talk about this. He goes hand in hand and plays a very important role inside and outside India. So he was a charismatic leader and advocated complete and immediate independence. And he talked about, give me blood, I will give you freedom. Again, a very young civil servant, then leaves civil services in 1920s, very close to Gandhi, very close to Nehru, a socialist in his leaning. Bose sought support for Axis powers, Germany, World War II, strategically leveraging global conflict to advance India's inequality. नहीं. His leadership inspired patriotic fervor and renewed hope for liberation. Again, as far as role of Indian National Army is concerned, that is very important. You see, Indian National Army laid the foundation for the post-independence Indian Army. Nobody knows about it. Nobody talks about it. Indian National Army was the foundation which was built by Bose. Women plays a very important role, and INA's campaign, particularly in Imphal and Burma front, symbolize active resistance, which is shooking the base of the Britishers. Now, as far as the second part of it is concerned, then we can talk about the impact in freedom movement. Bose and Indian National Army introduced new dimensions to the freedom struggle by demonstrating, you see, by demonstrating and highlighting the inspiring mass participation. The masses, when Indian National Army was there, the masses lost the fear of army because they knew that our fellow army people will never ever point fingers and bullets on us. The efforts highlighted the political consciousness, inspired participation in civil disobedience, and post Second World War. The INA's legacy impacted post independence military. So, this is very important. So, you can talk about these things one by one. Now, as far as the next question is concerned, this question is very, very important. Evaluate the continuous challenges of the state reorganization in India. So, this is a post independence question. So you can start with continuing challenges of state reorganization in India, views through a historical lens, reflect long-standing struggle. You see, when India got independence, you can talk about, India had so many challenges to bring together, to put together everything Like we had immigration issue, we had participation issue, we had regional issues, we had language issues. In that scenario, to bring everybody together and make a nation was very, very important. So here is the role of post independence reorganization, so you can talk about it now. So in the main part you can talk about certain things like we had issues with princely states, with provinces, and regions with distinct languages. The first major push was the State Reorganization Act of 1956, and again the establishment of Andhra from Madras Presidency. We all know the unfortunate incidents of Raja Putulu's death, which ultimately led to the establishment of Andhra Pradesh. And this act resolved many but all disputes as various regions continued to seek separate statehood. Again, there was problem of regionalism. After immediately after this, we saw the issue of Maharashtra and Gujarat. We all know, so you can talk about that. And there is a problem of regional identity politics, where after Britishers left India was not one India. Those people who always criticize regional identity, ethnical aspirations since 1950s, like Nagaland issue, like Mizoram issue, like issue of Telangana, emerged from prolonged movement starting from ethnic cultural distinctiveness. So these things play a very, very important role. Political mobilization up also played a very, very important role. Excuse me. So you can talk about that how movements of new state historically came up through violent agitations. I've talked about Andhra Pradesh. So we can talk about there were issues like there was language issue. Gujarat was a Gujarat speaking state. Maharashtra was a Marathi speaking state. In Maharashtra, most of the laborers were from Marathi clan. Most of the bureaucrats came from Karnataka. Most of the businessmen in Maharashtra, Bombay were Gujaratis, which ultimately dissatisfied the local people who thought that all the resources of their state are taken by the outsiders. Gujaratis, who were the businessmen, and Karnatkas, who were the IAS and IPS officers. This led to the regional son of soil movement starting from Maharashtra, then in Assam, where Bengalis were very much in the population. Then we had issues like Assam, Asu, there were problems, there were militancy, there were Naxalism in 1960s onwards, there were various internal security challenges. Again, not to forget the issues of Punjab and Haryana, where Punjab was asking for Chandigarh, Haryana wanted to ask for Chandigarh. So these are issues along with the reforms. Like from 1960s onwards, you can talk about that how the Green Revolution ultimately gave voice to Akalis, the Jats, the Sikhs, the Bengalis were ousted from Assam. So there were certain issues starting from Maharashtra Son of Soil movement to Assam Son of Soil movement to Telangana issue to creation of first we had creation of Andhra Pradesh, then we had creation of Gujarat, Maharashtra separate states, then creation of um, Haryana and Punjab, then creation of Assam sister states, then creation of Arunachal Pradesh, Sikkim, Himachal Pradesh. So nation making was never a very easy task. This has been a very important task, very crucial task, and hand in hand was the development. We had to do the development also, all the IITs, IIMs, all the Bhagrangal dams. So recent demands of these things were the demand of Telangana. Again, if we talk about the other things, we can talk about many issues still we are facing. What are those issues? Like Bodo land demand, the demand for Bodo land, Gorkha land, Vidarbh, Koshal, Bodo land. Again, the Maru Pradesh. Where is it? It's in Rajasthan. We had Purvanchal issue. So, post independence, we had a lot of economic challenges, a lot of administrative challenges, a lot of political challenges, a lot of cultural linguistic challenges. So, everything put together were smaller and bigger challenges, which we are still facing. But the nation in the making, as all of historians said, that this nation, the democratic nation, the rights are still going on and we are still rising high. So you can talk about those things in your what do you call it, concluding lines. Then let's talk about the last question. No, sorry, the second last question. Critically examine the continuity and change in Odisha's socio-cultural fabric. Well, this is very important. Where Odisha socio-cultural fabric exhibits dynamic interplay, like it's a very mix, where we have different religions, different tribes, different cultures, but they are sticking together thanks to the the Bhakti movement. As far as continuity in the religious culture is concerned, we do see that the Jagannath culture, I would call it the Jagannath culture, the religious tradition of culture of Hindu culture from Jagannath temple of Puri remains the center of everything, where Puri is the center, cultural center, political center. And of course, the art and architecture is very important. So cultural Kalinga architecture remains very important. Language, Odia language becomes very important, starting from Madhusudan Das and other people, Jagbandhu and other people. So apart from political consciousness, there is a consciousness of the language. Again, language, Odia language plays very important role. The Bhakti poetry, even local languages, the Geet Govindas, vital cultural presence becomes very visible. Then one can talk about the social practices, festival such as Yath Yatra, which is still going on, Chau dance, which is still going on. But what are the challenges? What are the changes we are facing? Let's talk about them one by one. Now, if we talk about changes, you see there is colonial impact on English education, administrative education, socio-economic challenges, which is disrupting the traditional society, the traditional culture. Again, the social reform movement reforms challenge the caste hierarchy, gender inequality, orthodoxy, and other things which are positive. Globalization and other things leading to urban growth and have diversified cultural expressions. And then we have political mobilization where regional identity politics is hovering, is getting over other issues of national and religious and cultural interaction. So you can talk about these things one by one. At the end, the last but not the least is the question which is very important. Discuss the literary contributions to Radhanath Ray, Madhusudan Rao, and Gangadhar Meher in ushering modernism in Odia literature. So we are talking about 18th, 19th, and 20th century, and how these stalwarts like Madhusudan Rao play a very very important uh, uh, role in arousing the national and cultural identity, regional identity in Odisha. Okay, so these people are three of the most important poets of Odia literature who played a key role in bringing the ideas and styles which leads to modernism in Odia literature. Their their combined efforts helped transform Odia's poetry, made it more meaningful, more connected with the contemporary world. It's not the old style; it's a new style of this thing. And let's talk about them one by one. So Radhanath Ray. Radhanath Ray is often considered to be as the father of more modern Odia poetry. He introduced the themes of traditional stories, focuses on patriotism, humanism, emotions, and nature and social issues. His poems always arouse the issues of society of the Odisha. His poetry known for this beautiful language and its fresh style, which was later copied by others. He also brought in influences from modern Western literature, and which had a uh, you know regional flavor. As far as romantic poems are concerned, he helped modernize Odia poetry. His literature, especially the romantic poems, which helped modernize Odia poetry. His famous poets are Kedar Gauri and Chilka, which are the masterpieces we can see, which are classical beauty. Then we have Madhusudan Rao. As far as Madhusudan Rao ji is concerned, Madhusudan Rao contributed to Odia literature for its clarity, his simplicity, his moral lessons, and his in his poems. He is known as Bhakta Kavi, devotional poet, but his works also carries a social message. Very important. Society is very important. Any literate person, any poet like Kabir, like other people, Nanak, or in this case Madhusudan Rao, in 18th and 19th century, these people are the ones who are the torch bearers. Along with Gandhi, these people are very much influential in the regional movements of Odisha. He introduced modern poetic forms like sonnets and used straightforward languages which connected deeply with the people. And then, at last but not the least, we had Gangadhar Meher, a very, very important regional hero. Gangadhar Meher is regarded as the great poet who combined traditional Odia folklore with classical style of modern subjects. So he connected Gangadhar Meher helped Odia literature grow by showing that poetry could inspire change and express the struggles of ordinary people. This is very important. Together, these three, Ragant Ray, Madhusudan Rao, and Gangadhar Meher, brought modernism in the Odia literature. They mixed the simple, powerful languages and had a fresh poetic forms. They made poetry a tool to express contemporary social political issues Odia society was facing, helping Odia literature to move forward and remain alive, remain fresh in the modern Odian society. Okay, so this is it about our thing. Uh, uh, if you have any queries, you can reach out to us on our website. Thank you so much.